Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back? Not because of something you did or something that happened, but because something quiet shifted deep within, and you can't quite explain when or how. It's subtle, almost silent, like a chapter that ended without warning, or a song that faded out mid-verse. They told you that real change takes years of effort, that awakening has to be hard, that healing requires layers of work, of pain, of processes, that you'll know it happened when it hurts enough. But what if I told you that's not true? What if your old self is already gone, and you've just been trying to keep alive a version of you that no longer exists? Transformation doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it happens like the shedding of old skin, soft, natural, inevitable. A snake doesn't fight to let go. It just outgrows, and what once protected starts to feel too tight. Think about that. What if the heaviness you feel is not the weight of something you still carry, but the tension of what you've already outgrown? Science backs this up. Dr. Bruce Lipton's work in epigenetics shows that the moment you shift your perception, your biology responds instantly. Your cells, your chemistry, your identity follow your focus. And when that inner perception no longer feeds the old version of you, that version collapses, quietly. But here's the twist. Even when the shift begins, most people run back, not because the old self is stronger, but because the unknown feels too silent, too spacious, too unfamiliar. So they rehearse old habits, replay old thoughts, reconnect with old emotions, not out of need, but out of muscle memory, out of fear of disappearing into something they can't yet define. And that's where you might be now, caught between the echo of who you were and the pull of who you're becoming. But you're not stuck, because in this video, we're going to decode the silent signs of identity collapse. We'll dive into how to recognize the frequency of your new self and what it actually means to stop trying and start tuning. Let's unravel the layers together. If this theme is calling to something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel and walk this path with me. But do it now. Don't let this moment slip by unnoticed. There's something waiting to be remembered. The silent collapse. Signs your old self already dissolved. Some endings are so quiet, we don't even hear them until much later. You wake up one morning, and your favorite song suddenly feels distant. The food you always loved has no flavor. Conversations that once excited you now feel forced, artificial. Nothing happened, and yet everything feels slightly off. That's not depression, that's not confusion, that's energetic detachment. What you're feeling is the silent collapse of an identity that no longer matches your current frequency. And the reason it feels so strange is because the mind hasn't caught up with the soul. It's like trying to wear a shirt from a decade ago. You've outgrown it. Not just in size, but in shape, in essence. It clings awkwardly, doesn't move with you, makes you feel like something's wrong. But the only thing that's really happening is that you changed. Your old self, your old frequency, your old survival strategies, they no longer fit. And the discomfort you're feeling is not because something is broken. It's because something is being released. Let me explain. Ancient spiritual texts like the Upanishads describe this process as a death that happens without mourning. The soul transitions, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a soft breath, with dreams that make no sense, with time feeling warped, with waves of fatigue that have no medical explanation. These are not flaws. These are signs. They're signals that the old energetic structure, the one that held your identity, is unraveling, piece by piece, thread by thread. But here's the twist. The more you resist it, the more painful it becomes. Because holding on to what's collapsing is like trying to rebuild a sandcastle during a tide. You waste energy, you stay exhausted, and still, it washes away. So what's the alternative? Let it fall. Let the old self decay in peace. Let the version of you that learned to survive, learned to please, learned to hide, dissolve. Because when you stop labeling the discomfort as wrong, you begin to recognize it as initiation. Pause for a moment. Feel into that. What if what you're calling chaos is actually the space where your real self is starting to breathe? Let's go even deeper. Because next, we'll explore the hidden reason you keep falling back into old patterns, even after awakening has already started. It has to do with something you can't see, but you're always feeding. And before we go there, if something in this message is starting to echo inside of you, leave your mark. Type a single word in the comments that captures what you're feeling right now. Maybe it's release, maybe it's truth, maybe it's peace. Just one word. That word becomes a frequency. Observer loop is over. The identity you observed no longer exists. There's something powerful that few people realize about identity. You don't just have an identity. You observe it. You focus on it. You feed it, mentally and emotionally. And in the quantum field, whatever you consistently observe solidifies into what you call reality. But what happens when you stop observing it? According to quantum physics, and supported by thinkers like Dr. Joe Dispenza, when you remove observation, the wave collapses, the form disappears. That means identity too only exists as long as you keep energizing it with attention. So let's connect the dots. If you've stopped resonating with your old self, and stopped reacting like you used to, and stopped caring about the things that once defined you, then what exactly are you still observing? Who exactly are you still trying to be? Because without your mental focus, your old identity has no field to stand on. It's like a hologram losing its light source. It starts to flicker, then fade, until it becomes nothing more than a memory in your nervous system, waiting for another moment of attention to bring it back. But here's the thing. Even when the collapse has started, the mind still craves familiarity. So it replays old dialogues. It visualizes old habits. It reconstructs an identity out of nostalgia and fear. Not because it's real, but because it feels known. And the more you check in on the old version of yourself by thinking the same thought, reacting the same way, repeating the same complaint, the more you unconsciously resurrect it. You've seen it before, you just didn't know how to read it. That's the observer loop. A cycle where you observe what no longer serves you and then wonder why it still feels present. Here's the process. You think about the version of you that was tired, wounded, afraid. You feel those emotions again. Your body remembers. You react in a way that proves, see, I haven't changed, but you have changed. You're just observing an echo, not a truth. So how do you stop feeding the old self? Don't fight it. Don't affirm the opposite. Just stop paying rent in a house you no longer live in. When the thought comes, let it pass. When the trigger rises, feel it, but don't follow it. And when the voice of your old identity whispers, this is who you are, reply with silence. Let it echo into stillness. Let it dissolve, because your attention is sacred, and where you place it is who you become. Now let's take this deeper. We'll explore why, even after observing your old self fading, part of you still clings to it. It's not just psychological, it's chemical. And your biology has something to say. Dopamine detachment, the addictive loop that delays your shift. You've let go mentally, you've shifted spiritually, but somehow you're still reacting the same way. Still drawn to the same arguments, still craving the same validations, still falling into the same emotional loops, even when you know better. Why? Because your old self wasn't just a mindset. It was a chemical pattern, an internal cocktail your body got used to and secretly depended on. Bruce Lipton explains it clearly. After years of repeating emotional responses, your cells develop receptors for those specific neurochemicals. That means your body can literally crave stress or sadness or guilt, not because you want to feel that way, but because your biology has been conditioned to survive on those chemicals. So even when your soul is expanding, your cells are asking for one more hit of the past. It's like a loop you can't see, but you feel it. The desire to check your phone during silence, the impulse to mentally rehearse what they said, the emotional flashback to a memory you thought was healed. You're not failing, you're detoxing. Detoxing from the dopamine spikes that once came from drama, from overthinking, from being right, from needing closure, from chasing validation, all subtle, all emotional, all addictive. Let me give you a modern metaphor. Imagine you've moved into a new home, peaceful, light-filled, open, but your nervous system still expects the sound of sirens from the old neighborhood. So you flinch at silence, you brace for conflict, you search for tension. Not because it's there, but because it used to be. Here's the shift. Real peace feels boring to a nervous system addicted to chaos. Real alignment feels unfamiliar to a mind trained to survive disconnection. That's why most people return to their old identity, not because they miss it, but because their body craves its chemistry. But what if the most powerful truth was hiding where you never thought to look? Here's something you can begin now. Next time you feel the urge to argue, explain, prove, defend, control, pause, breathe, recognize the sensation for what it is, a chemical echo, and instead of reacting, witness it. Let the wave pass, because your power isn't in resisting it. Your power is in not responding to it the way you used to. Let's go even deeper. Now we'll unravel a concept that many misunderstand, the idea of letting go, because contrary to popular belief, letting go is not a mental choice. It's something else entirely. Letting go is not a decision, it's a frequency. Everyone talks about letting go. Let go of fear, let go of the past, let go of control, as if it were a switch you can flip, as if it were something you do. But what if letting go isn't a decision? What if it's a frequency? Let me explain. Letting go doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the body, in the field around you, in your vibration. Because the truth is, you can't force a release. You can only rise into a frequency where the old can no longer hold on. It's not about trying harder, it's about tuning better. Think of it like a radio. You're trying to hear a new station, peace, joy, clarity, but you're still tuned into static. You twist the dial a little, but the old channel keeps bleeding through. Why? Because the shift hasn't reached the exact frequency yet. That's what happens when you try to let go, but still feel heavy, reactive, or lost. You're mentally releasing, but vibrationally holding. And here's the truth most miss. What you haven't integrated, you can't release. If you still carry shame around a version of yourself, it lingers. If you judge your past patterns, they anchor. If you try to cut off the emotion instead of decoding its message, it loops. So what's the alternative? Pause for a moment. Breathe. Now imagine you're standing in a stream. The water is cold, fast, overwhelming. Your instinct might be to fight it. But what if you just softened your body, relaxed your grip and let it carry you? That's alignment, that's frequency. Letting go is not about trying to be different. It's about entering a state where the old no longer matches. And sometimes, that shift is so subtle, you don't even notice the moment it happens. You just realize one day that what used to hurt now just feels distant. What used to trigger now passes. What used to define you now feels like someone else's story. You didn't let go. You changed your frequency. Even Edgar Cayce spoke of this in his readings. He called it the resonance of the soul. that our higher identity exists outside of time and only reveals itself fully when our vibration rises to meet it. So instead of forcing surrender, become the self that no longer clings. And now we'll explore something even more subtle and even more dangerous. The illusion that you're evolving when you're actually rehearsing. Not changing, just performing change. You may be closer to that trap than you think. Let's go there together. The illusion of progress. When you're stuck in spiritual rehearsal, there's a strange place on the path of transformation, a liminal space that looks like progress, but isn't. You meditate, you journal, you speak affirmations, you watch videos like this, you feel a shift, and then days later you're back in the same emotional spiral, the same trigger, the same self-talk. It's confusing because it feels like you're evolving, but deep down, you know something's off. That's the illusion of spiritual rehearsal. You're not stuck because you're not growing. You're stuck because you're rehearsing the idea of growth instead of embodying it. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine an actor rehearsing a powerful scene. He cries on cue. He delivers every word with passion. But when the scene ends, nothing changes in his real life. That's what happens when your healing stays in theory, not in frequency. You repeat mantras, but don't believe them. You do the breath work, but your nervous system stays clenched. You talk about vibration, but still live in reaction. This isn't failure, it's feedback, because the soul doesn't respond to performance. It responds to alignment, and alignment can't be faked. So how do you know if you're rehearsing instead of transforming? If you need to keep repeating the same practice to feel balanced, if you fear what happens when the tools are taken away, if you find yourself constantly almost there, waiting for one more breakthrough, you're probably looping, not because you're not ready, but because part of you is still trying to deserve your healing instead of inhabiting it. But what if the key is not doing more, but trusting deeper? What if your next level doesn't come from another practice, but from releasing the belief that you're broken? Pause, breathe into that, let that land. Because the moment you stop performing healing, true integration begins. And if you're still here, still watching, still open, thank you. That means you're not just here for inspiration, you're here for real change. So take a moment. Let us know in the comments if you've ever felt this, if you've been caught in the loop of rehearsing instead of becoming. Your story could help someone else break free too. And if this message has resonated, subscribe to the channel. Be part of this community. You're not alone on this path. We're walking it together. And the most powerful part of this journey is still unfolding. Now, let's take one more step forward, because if you've truly shifted, the world around you starts to show signs. Reality begins to glitch. Time begins to blur. Let's explore why next. Reality glitches and timeline drift. You're already somewhere else. You've probably felt it, that strange moment when time slips, when memory feels unreliable, when reality feels like it's missing a frame. You're having a conversation you're sure already happened. You're walking into a room and forgetting why. You're seeing number patterns, hearing echoes, sensing shifts in people. Even though nothing on the surface has changed, these aren't coincidences. They're markers, clues that you've moved beyond a timeline your mind still believes you're in. Because here's what most don't realize. Your consciousness can leap ahead of your perception. Your vibration shifts first, and only later does your mental structure catch up. Science is starting to echo this. At Princeton University, researchers studying the influence of consciousness on random events found subtle but measurable patterns, like intention-bending probability, awareness affecting matter, perception shaping outcome. The mind isn't just observing reality, it's weaving it. So what does that mean for you? It means you could already be living in a new reality, but your eyes haven't fully recalibrated. You're seeing fragments of the past overlapping with pieces of the future. You're navigating the residue of a frequency you no longer belong to, and the more you resist this dissonance, the stronger it gets. People call it glitching, feeling off, not knowing who they are anymore, but what they're really experiencing is timeline drift, the energetic lag between where you were and where your frequency has already landed. Let me give you an example. Have you ever tried to log into a familiar app only to realize the interface has completely changed? Your fingers move out of habit, expecting the old version. But nothing works the same. That's what happens when you try to live from your old patterns in a new frequency. You're navigating with a map that no longer applies. And yet, most people, when faced with this confusion, try to go back. They seek out the familiar. They reattach to old beliefs. They repeat behaviors that once brought comfort, even if they now feel hollow, not because it's right, but because it's known. But what if this disorientation is proof you've shifted? What if déjà vu, strange dreams, memory gaps, time distortions are all indicators that you're no longer where you think you are? Instead of seeing them as problems, start seeing them as confirmations. The space between timelines can feel surreal, like walking between mirrors. But this is where miracles emerge, in the thin veil between what was and what is becoming. So how do you stabilize in the new frequency? Act from it. Speak from it. Move through the world as if you already are who your soul knows you to be. Even when your mind hesitates, even when the outer world hasn't fully responded, because embodiment precedes evidence. You don't wait for life to prove you've changed. You live in alignment with the change, and then life recalibrates to match. And this leads us into perhaps the most important realization of all, that your new identity cannot and will not emerge through the energy of your old one. Let's take that step together. A new identity can't be accessed with old energy. You've envisioned your new self. You've journaled it, meditated on it, felt glimpses of it. But somehow it still feels distant, like something just out of reach. You know it's possible. You can almost taste it. But when you try to step into it fully, something tugs you back. And here's why. Every identity carries a specific vibrational signature, like a unique frequency code. And just like you can't unlock a door with the wrong key, you can't access a new version of yourself while still pulsing with the emotional code of the old one. The energy of fear can't carry you into the frequency of expansion. The energy of control can't guide you into the field of trust. And the energy of shame will always block the experience of wholeness. That's why trying to force change through willpower rarely works. Because willpower is often built on resistance, on fighting against the self you no longer want to be. But resistance is still connection. It still feeds the loop. So what does it look like to truly shift? It begins with energetic rupture, not with violence, but with clarity. A moment where you silently declare, I don't live there anymore. Not as a metaphor, not as a wish, but as an embodied truth. Let me give you a tool for this. Close your eyes, breathe in, and internally whisper this declaration. I release all contracts with the version of me that was built in survival. Then pause. Let the echo of those words settle into your body. Say it again if you need to, not louder, but deeper. That's what we call the declaration of no return. It doesn't erase your past. It honors it, but it also ends your obligation to perform it. And from that place, something opens. Your gestures shift, your decisions feel cleaner. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't even need to announce who you're becoming. You just become. Sometimes that transformation begins with a breakdown. Sometimes it starts with silence, and sometimes it begins with a story, like the one I'm about to tell you now. There was a woman years ago who had built her life around being the caretaker, always giving, always present, always useful. But beneath her smile, she was exhausted, invisible, dissolving. One night, sitting alone, she didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just stopped. She stopped answering calls, stopped explaining, stopped trying to be good. And for the first time, she listened to the silence. That silence became her new language. Today, she doesn't call herself awakened or enlightened. She just is, at peace, clear, and profoundly unrecognizable to the version of her that once ran on duty and depletion. She didn't upgrade, she shifted, not with effort, but with energy, and that's the invitation. You don't need to fix what was. You just need to release what no longer resonates. Because your new self doesn't need your old self's permission. It only needs your presence. Let's gather all these threads now and bring this journey to a close with the clarity it deserves. If you see this, your old self is already gone. Your old self isn't coming back, not because you failed, not because you let go wrong, but because it was never meant to stay. It was only ever a doorway and not a destination. And now you're standing in the threshold of something vast, quiet, and unfamiliar. That's silence. It's not emptiness, it's space. Space for your new frequency to rise. Space for your soul's truth to finally speak without competing with echoes from a version of you that only knew how to survive. And if you feel unsteady in this newness, that's okay. The first breath after a long dive always feels disorienting, but it's also where life begins again. You don't have to know exactly who you are becoming. You just have to stop pretending to be who you no longer are, because every moment you choose stillness over reaction, presence over performance, alignment over appearance, you're embodying the self your future has been waiting for. Remember, the reality begins where your old pattern ends. Let that phrase anchor you when doubt returns. Let it remind you that the shift is real, and you're not imagining it. Thank you for being here, for walking this journey with me, for offering your presence, your energy, your listening heart. If this video touched something inside you, let me know in the comments. Tell me what landed, what moved, what awakened. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and keep walking with us. Because this is only the beginning. There's so much more waiting for you in the next video here. And if you're still feeling that pulse inside, you're ready. Your new frequency is already calling you home.